morning to you all, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this session on how to make sustainability thinking become more relevant to tourism in West Africa. My name is Olivia and I'm based in London. I work for Greenview, an international consultancy based in Singapore. We support hotel and tourism businesses across all elements of sustainability, measurement and performance. You can find out more about us at www.greenview.sg. I would just like to start by admitting that while I have worked in tourism for nearly 2 decades now, I am definitely no expert in West Africa. My good friend Adam has highlighted some of the key challenges and opportunities to me, but my aim today is to give you some global perspectives and frameworks, which I hope you will find relevant and can adapt to your own particular destinations, businesses, and experiences. So before I dive into some of my thoughts on how we can make sustainability more relevant to tourism, and particularly the business case for it, I thought I would briefly share some thoughts on what is sustainability. As you are probably aware, there are many definitions out there and many different ways of looking at it. Now, I'm not going to discuss here the rights and wrongs of each, but more how different frameworks can help in different situations with different audiences. So this is the core definition: development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. This comes from a report called the Brundtland Report, published in the 1980s. The 3 tenets of people, planet and profit working together is universal and is a simple way to think about why sustainability is important. However, it's very high level and leaves quite a few questions unanswered. The Sustainable Development Goals is a framework established in 2017, signed up to at the UN by 192 countries, whose aim is to eliminate poverty by 2030. Developed with business and a really good framework for defining and breaking down what sustainability is, the UN Sustainability Goals allow you to put sustainability into more manageable chunks, such as water, energy, gender equality, etc. However, it also serves to make us remember that they are all interlinked. You cannot achieve sustainability by looking at just one of the goals on its own. Many businesses are linking their sustainability work to the SDGs. It shows how what they're doing is playing into the bigger picture. And from a tourism perspective, it shows how tourism itself supports the global agenda. And never has this been more important than right now. And finally, we have ESG, another acronym, I'm afraid. ESG stands for Environmental, Social and Governance. This is the integration of sustainability into the financial world, disclosing and measuring metrics and performance. And when the financial community wakes up, then the rest of the world has to as well. And I will talk more about this later on. So there are different ways, therefore, of looking at sustainability. But it's important not to get bogged down in definitions. Sustainability thinking is only relevant if it's practical and practicable. And tourism can only be successful if it has tourists or visitors or guests, however you would like to describe them. So for me, critical to the business case is its relevance to the consumer. And we are seeing significant shifts in this direction. Earlier this year, Booking.com released research from 20,000 travellers in 30 countries. It's the largest consumer study of sustainability and tourism and shows some compelling results. Nearly 2/3 of travellers say that the pandemic has made them want to travel more sustainably in the future, and nearly half admit that the pandemic has shifted their attitude to make positive changes in their everyday lives. When they travel, 84% believe increasing cultural understanding and preservation of cultural heritage is crucial. 76% want to ensure equal spread of economic impact, and 73% want an authentic experience. 81% of global travellers want to stay in sustainable accommodation, up from 62% in 2016. 73% say they would be more likely to choose an accommodation if it has implemented sustainability practices. And the biggest issues are waste, threat to wildlife and nature, overcrowding, and carbon emissions. And they're willing to play their part as well, reducing energy consumption, using environmentally friendly modes of transport, reducing water use, and reducing their own carbon footprint. So sustainability is becoming more integrated with the guest expectations and experience. And it's not just leisure travel. Business travel is really important as well. Pre-COVID data from the World Travel and Tourism Council shows that business travel accounts for about half of Nigeria's total tourism spend and about a third of Ghana's. And we're seeing real movements from those companies that drive business travel in terms of their requirements for sustainability. Salesforce, for example, requires all vendors to have a net zero path and penalizes them if they don't. Netflix has a net zero commitment by the end of 2022, which also involves how it relates to its business travel. And EY has a net zero by 2025 commitment, which includes reduction of business travel emissions by 35% from 2019. Hotel stays are in scope 3, so within the indirect carbon emissions of all these companies' carbon footprint, and they have to report and reduce, and their investors want it too. So as you can see, we're seeing demand both on the leisure side and the business side towards sustainability. So my first point is to make sustainability more relevant is to link it to your consumers. And as you will know, consumers make the business case. But consumers are not the only stakeholders who are increasingly prioritizing sustainability. I already mentioned the finance world, and we're seeing a phenomenal focus on this area from the investment community. And from them, it is all about risk and resilience. The long-term performance of investments is increasingly dependent on understanding and mitigating sustainability risks. This is Larry Fink, the chairman of BlackRock. BlackRock now requires all companies it's investing in to disclose their sustainability, or ESG, risks and how they are addressing them. We're also seeing an increased profile and focus on sustainability and ESG across all stakeholder groups. There is a momentum that started before the pandemic, but which has been significantly sped up as a result of it. And you can see here that all these issues, resource scarcity, supply chain issues, human rights, are making investors think twice. And it's not just the investor community. Funding agencies also have sustainability requirements. Alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals is often a criteria of funding. We've recently worked with the IFC on developing a new credit line for hotels. This will be linked to environmental improvements and performance. The EU, through its Green Deal, is also prioritising this. And here is an example from Thailand, where the local bank provided considerable incentives for SMEs who were going green. And this is all linked to risk and resilience. So what kind of risks do we need to be addressing? There are different ways of looking at sustainability risks, and here is just one way of breaking down the different types of risks that's particularly relevant for companies. The first is market risks, i.e. everything that might impact the consumer demand. The second is physical risks, which is everything that affects the physical ability of the business to operate. And the third is regulatory risks, and we're seeing more and more of this coming into play. And this is the government response to some of these sustainability risks in terms of new regulations that they bring in and impose on companies, which may affect the company's ability to operate. And so ESG is not so much about doing good, although that's a byproduct. It's about managing risk and ultimately improving performance, increasing the requirement for companies to identify and mitigate the sustainability risks, and it will become more and more integrated into the day-to-day, which is why a basic understanding of this is important. And I just wanted to share with you this table, which was published by WTTC back in 2017, which shows some of the most important risks in travel and tourism and how sustainability is embedded in them. So, for example, we see mention of relationships with local communities, waste and pollution, climate change. For hotels, it's about workforce, climate change, local culture and heritage. Also interesting to see here is the prevalence of health crises as a risk. And this was published, as I said, back in 2017, although I'm not sure the risk planning really encompassed the full reality of what might happen. So we need to think about sustainability in the context of risk and resilience. And thirdly, of course, there are operational benefits to a more sustainable approach. Sustainability can bring efficiency and cost savings. Our research shows that there are significant efficiencies to be made and the impact on utility costs can be huge. For most hotels, for example, utilities are the largest cost after staff costs, and a sustainable approach when it comes to the local community and staff engagement will also reap benefits in terms of skills development and reducing turnover, and retaining staffing the industry which is a massive issue, particularly now. So let's just look at this example from Thailand. Here we have looking at a particular hotels across Bangkok, Phuket, and Thailand as general. And we have the most efficient hotels in green. So if we look at Bangkok, for example, an average of just under 150 kilowatt hours per square meter for the most efficient hotels, compared to nearly 250 kilowatt hours for the least efficient. That's an efficiency gap ratio of over 1.5. And similarly for water, if we look at the Phuket example here this time, the most efficient are using on average about 350 litres per occupied room. That's the green bar, compared to nearly 1,000 for the least efficient, an efficiency gap ratio of 2.5. And all of this impacts the bottom line. We're not talking about big capital expenditure in order to achieve this either. Metering, thermostats, reusing grey water, for example. And for this hotel in Bangkok, there's a potential to save over $11.5 million a year in energy costs and $1.3 million in water costs. And this is calculated by taking the difference between the average energy cost of an efficient hotel compared to an inefficient hotel. So you can see the difference is significant. But it's not just savings from utilities which have a bearing on the bottom line. If you cast your minds back to the slides I shared from the booking.com at the beginning, authenticity is an increasing priority for consumers. And there is a lot of consumer research post-COVID showing the importance of experiences and wellness as well. And a sustainable approach, one which plays to the uniqueness of the local community, heritage and nature, results in product differentiation based on unique experiences and authenticity. And finally, the most important point of all, local economic benefits. And this is the magic thread that pulls everything I have said together. First of all, consumers want to contribute to the areas they visit. Secondly, investors and funders want resilient businesses entrenched in their local communities and economies. Third, sustainability brings direct benefit to businesses, which in turn benefits the local community. Strong and involved local populations mean a more resilient tourism product, which itself is more sustainable in the long term. So make sure you understand and plan for the operational benefits. As I mentioned at the beginning, sustainability is a big topic and can be difficult to pin down in terms of what it means and looks like in reality. I think there are two things to realise here. First of all, sustainability is a journey. All too often we focus on a binary. Is something sustainable or not? Well, I hate to break it to you, but there are very few examples, especially in tourism, of absolute sustainability. But that does not mean you shouldn't try. It's a journey. It's a process, but it's one you need to track. You need to measure progress, understand what's working and what's not, and build it into monitoring and evaluation. So my final piece of advice to making sustainability thinking more relevant to businesses is to start simple and measure progress. And the first step is to rethink the definition of tourism success and how you measure it. Traditionally, it was all about visitor numbers, heads in beds, and spend. But as we have seen, there are so many more factors which denote tourism success. For example, impact on local supply chain, improvement to infrastructure, conservation benefits, carbon emissions reduction, and most importantly, resident satisfaction. And from a business perspective, you need to build sustainability thinking and measurement in the whole cycle. This is just a quick example from a hotel investment project, but you need to do the sustainability screening and due diligence before you invest. And then you need to make sure you build it into planning and budgeting and build in systems for ongoing monitoring and improvement. And finally, just a quick note on what this process looks like in practice. You need to have staff involved, a green team or a champion. You should measure and monitor what you're doing and track your performance, water, energy, waste, etc., and keep track of progress. Keep looking for new opportunities and the right time to implement them. Document what you're doing so you can share it and learn from others. And finally, and this takes me back to the very beginning, engage your customers not only on the experience, but also the positive impact. So sustainability is a journey, a process, not a single action or decision, but a process which engages all stakeholders. It can be applied to and needs to be applied to tourism anywhere in the world, not least West Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure and an honour to talk to you today. I wish you success for your event and look forward to discussing this important issue with you further. Thank you.